Hello everyone, my name is Alejandro Aguilar, and in this video I just want to talk to you guys about Blender and show you how to make a really quick prop. Maybe if you haven't seen one of the more recent videos in the Nexttut channel, I was introduced by Abraham as the newest tutor, and what I specialize in is Blender. So let me just show you really quick. Let's just open Blender right now. Okay, so here we are in Blender. What I'm going to be doing is just a lot of tutorials in Blender, modeling, maybe even working on sculpts or even working on shaders. But basically what I want to do is teach you guys how to use it. So if you've never used Blender before and you've thought about it and you kind of want to know, well, hopefully you'll learn a thing or two in these videos that I'll be making. And if you're someone that works in Maya or someone that works in 3ds Max, hopefully it won't be too hard of a transition. One of my, I guess, points that I learned when moving over from Maya to Blender was everything's there. It's just kind of in different areas. So if you want to say edit an object, you come up to object mode, you turn it to edit mode, and there you go. So that's kind of what I mean. It's all within the program, but you just kind of have to learn where things are. So just follow along with me in the videos and I'll show you where things are. So, all right, let's get started with the prop that we're going to do today. And the one I chose is just a really quick crate. So this is just a picture I found on the web, and it's just something that we'll be using for today. So I already have it saved. Wanted to prepare for you guys. But let's go back into Blender. All right, so one of the things that we can do is just import an image, and we do it like this. So you go to File, you come over to Import, and go to Image as Planes. So from here, you just go to wherever you saved it, and here's this little folder area that it kind of works like Windows' File Explorer. So just kind of find where your things are, and wherever you have things saved. If you have it saved on the desktop, go to the desktop, or if you have it saved to downloads, just go to downloads. So for me, I'm just going to go to downloads, click on wooden crate, JPEG, and then import images as planes. So here we go, and I'm just going to scale it up. If you noticed, I pressed the key. Um, Sorry about that. I'm going to try to keep everything kind of within the screen itself and not try to do many hotkeys. So if you want to do the scaling for this piece, the little tools over here are kind of what you need to move around and manipulate your objects. So I press the scale, and then right here, this circle itself, I can just grab it and scale it out like that. So there we go. We kind of did what we wanted. And if I need to move it, I'll just come over to Move and click on the object. And it looks a little bit like a Maya, maybe a little bit like 3ds Max. So just keep in mind that you have the tools here to kind of move stuff around and do as you want with your objects. So right now we don't really have anything showing, and that's because by default Blender doesn't show you textures, and you can't really see any textures at the moment. So one of the ways we can do this is if you come over here to the very kind of top right corner of your viewport, you have these four sphere looking icons. So the one we're in right now is a solid shader. So we're just going to move over one to the right, and this one will give you a texture shader. So as you can see, now that I clicked it, the texture showed up, and it's showing the image that we had imported. So now that we have that, we can start modeling. So first, let's get a block out. Let's just do a really quick block out. So I'm going to grab the cube and I'm going to scale it. And I'm thinking we can scale this along the y-axis, which is this green line right here. So I'm going to grab this green gizmo, hold it, and then just kind of move it out. So now it's scaling to actually right about there. It's pretty good. So great. I'm just going to move it out a little bit, following that y-axis. And there we go. So this is more or less a really quick block out. There you go. You learned how to model in Blender. So let's move forward. I think what we could probably do from here is just duplicate this object and get these little wooden slabs right here. So to duplicate something, you just go over to Object, and then down here you'll find Duplicate Object. If you can see, hopefully you can, there's a little icon, or not a little icon, a little shortcut right next to here that says Shift D. So what that means is if I click Shift D on my keyboard, it'll make this operation. So I can either come over here, click on Duplicate Object, and have it appear, or if I want to, I can hit Shift D and it'll do the same thing. So for now, let's just use the thing right here, the viewport tools. So duplicate objects. When you duplicate something like this, there's a few operations that kind of give you this weird, I want to say, manipulation where it just moves in 3D space. If you don't want this to happen, just hit right click after it's moving here and it'll stop. It'll kind of go back to where it was from where you started the duplication. And then you can use the tools right here on the left to move around your object. So let's just do that, and then we'll scale it. And then, let's see. Let's just scale it to say around here, maybe a little bit more. But that looks pretty good. Alright, so from here, what we can do is make another duplicate. So I'm just going to come over here, duplicate objects, do it again. And then I don't like what that does, so I'm just going to hit right click and it'll cancel it. And then we'll press the move button and just move it back. That looks pretty good. If you don't know what's happening, you can't really tell what's happening, don't worry. We just have the box here and we still have our pieces. It's just, it's not really showing what it is we're doing. So I'm just going to go to edit, undo. The also shortcut for undo, I'm pretty sure this is pretty common with most applications, is just Control Z. So one thing we can do to help with making our blockout is making this square itself, the blockout that we did, as a wireframe. So to do that, what we can do is come over here to the right side. So this area right here, this kind of lets you change different parts of your object, whatever you have selected. It kind of has like a bunch of things or attributes you could change. So for right now, we're going to stick to this square that's kind of selected right already. And so this will let you kind of manipulate it. Let's see if I kind of just grab one of these right here and just drag it around. It moves it in space. So yeah, it's another way to change how your objects are and manipulate them in any way you need to. So for right now, let's come over to Viewport Display. It's a few menu tabs down. And we're going to come over to Display As right here. So with Display As, it's just going to kind of display what it looks like in the viewport. And let's just change that to wire. So now that we are back in the viewport, as you can tell, we have the wireframe of the object showing. Pretty easy. Nothing too difficult to worry about. If you are wondering how I kind of rotate in the camera, I just hold the middle mouse button and it'll let me rotate. If I hold shift while middle mouse button, I kind of pan around, and then control middle mouse, it'll let me zoom. But let's just stick to rotating right now, and I'll just use the middle mouse button to rotate. So I'm just taking a good look at the box, the wireframe that we had just made. So I'm going to just push this one side in a little bit, and then this side in a little bit, and I'm going to kind of try to keep myself constrained within the box. If we need to move out later, we'll move out, but for now, let's just kind of stay where we are. So the next thing we need to do is make these little bars right here, and we don't really have to make any more things if we need to, but I'll just show you guys how to add more objects into your scene without having to duplicate them. So there's a little button here next to object called Add within the viewport. I just click Add, I go to Mesh, and then I'll select cube. So there you go. Really quick, easy, nothing really too worry about. So from here, I'll scale it. So I'll just scale it down, and let's just say maybe make it a little bit bigger. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then we'll squeeze it, kind of squish it along the x-axis so we get that nice plank look to it. So there we go. So now we kind of had the width. Now let's just drag it out so it looks more like a plank. Let's say there. So now I'll just kind of align it to the box using the gizmo. And see, that looks pretty good. There we go. And then I'll just scale it a little bit more so it fits better with our piece. Alright, that looks pretty good. We're not going to worry too much about it. Alright, so we have our piece there. It looks pretty good. Not too bad. So now what we can do is just duplicate it. So let's start from the top. So let's have it there, and then let's just go again, duplicate it. And then let's press right middle mouse button because I honestly don't know why they put that thing as a feature. There's a reason for it, but if you're trying to learn in Blender, it can be very confusing. Just remember to right click if you don't want the kind of moving around in 3D space that you want, or that it gives you, I guess. So let's leave it around here. That looks pretty good. And let's make another duplicate. And then just make sure that it's duplicated, and then hit right click and it'll go back. Move it there. That looks pretty good, I would say so. So now what we can do is we can join these together. So for the purpose of this new operation, what I need to do is select multiple objects. So to do that, I'll just hit Shift and hold it, and then I'll select another piece. And so what happens is any time this selection turns this kind of dark orange, that means that you have multiple objects selected. So if you can tell the middle one, plank, it's highlighted that kind of bright orange that we usually get. So that means that's our current selected object. So all we need to do now is just select the top one, and there you go. So after this, if you want to join objects together, you just come over to Object, and then right under Duplicate is Join. So there we go. Now what we can do is duplicate this, and it'll duplicate all 3 objects together. So let's do that. Alright, so it does the same thing as always, but it's not a worry. Now let's just rotate over here. And that looks pretty good. Alright, so as we're going into this, I think you're noticing as well, we have these boards, I guess, a little too tall. We need these to be a little bit shorter. If we look at the crate, it's more not square, more rectangle than square. So what we're going to do is we're going to join the two again, or not again, but join these two this time. So we joined it, and now we're going to scale it. But we're not really going to scale this time. We're actually going to edit them. So to do that, I'm going to go over here in this little drop down that I showed you earlier. So I'm just going to go to Edit mode, and so now I'm in Edit mode. So now I can just manipulate the edges, the faces, the vertices of this object, and let's just start with the vertices. So next to the drop down, you can see these 3 icons. This will kind of tell you you can either manipulate the vertices, you can manipulate the edges, or you can manipulate the faces. So let me just show you. So right now I clicked on the vertice selection, so you can tell the little dots appeared, and each one represents a vertex, sorry. And then if I choose the next one, which is Edge Select, now it'll select or show the edges. If I choose the last one, nothing really looks like it changes, but basically what I can do is now select faces. So let's just start with Vertex Select. So what I'm going to do is just click and drag and make sure I only have these bottom vertexes selected. So that looks good. And what we're going to do here is just grab the Move Manipulator and then move it upward. Now, before we finish, let's just double check with the picture. So, it looks like there's still a bit of space down here for the bottom planks. So let's just make sure to leave some area for that. Let's say there. That should be fine. Alright, so now that we're done, what we can do is come back to object mode. And there we go. So pretty easy, pretty straightforward. And then, yeah, let's do the bottom planks now. So I could just duplicate this one and rotate it down, but I need what looks like it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planks. So this has 3, but I'm going to need 5. So I think probably the better, not better way, but probably one of the easier ways to do it is just make a new plank entirely. So I'm going to come over to add, mesh, cube, and we'll just make another plank, and then we'll duplicate it as we go along. So I'll just grab the scale it down, and let's say that looks pretty good. Now I'll just kind of squish it down along the z-axis. That looks pretty good. And then I'll scale it down even more. Let's say to maybe like around there. All right, so let's just move it, get it into place. And there we go. All right, so now that we have that done, what we can do is, well, actually, we don't have to scale it. We can again use edit mode. So let's go back into edit mode, and this time we'll use the face select. So I'm just going to grab this face over here, and I'm just going to drag it out until it reaches the other end of the box. So let's say around there. So let's just push it back a little bit, and there we go. So now we have our plank. So with that done, what we can do is just go back into object mode. I see it's a little bit inward. Let's just push it down a little. And then there we go. Perfect. So now let's just start duplicating it. So again, object, duplicate objects. Don't worry if this happens. Just right click and then just move it to the side. And then just keep doing it as many as you need. And in no time, you'll have your crate. So let's see, one more. And then one last one. Let me just move this way. Alright, so we have a little bit more than we needed, but I think it's just because of the spacing. Space these out a little better. And I think we're good. Alright, so now what we can do is move this out of the way, and we have our crate. So, not too bad. I think we can change it a little bit more to make it look more like the image, but I think as a very first model, this is pretty good. So we don't need the block out anymore. What we can do is just delete it. So to do that, just come over to Object, and then all the way down, there's a delete. If you can tell, the shortcut is X. So just click on that, and there you go. Deletes it for you. So now that we have all this done, let's just drag select all of it, and then let's just try moving it, see if everything works. So there you go. All right, so pretty great model. Doesn't look too bad. Yeah, that looks actually pretty good. All right, well, right now I'm just going to take a quick little break. I'm just going to grab something to drink. My throat's a little parched. I think I got a little sick recently. Just a cold, nothing too serious. But yeah, in the next part, I'll just go over how to unwrap it and put a little quick texture on it. So I'll see you guys in a second. I'm just going to grab some water. All right, bye. Hey everyone, I'm back. So let's just jump back into where we were, where we left off. So we have our object and we have it all modeled out and all the pieces we need are here and we're ready to move forward. So if you want to make some final adjustments, just pause the video really quick and just do a little bit of changes before we move on. Try to keep everything that you have here more or less the same. If you want to make it longer, you want to move some pieces a little bit, that's fine. but for the purpose of the video, I'm going to try to work with this. So just make sure you have more or less everything pretty similar, and any changes you want, feel free to do them. So what we're going to do next is we're going to unwrap this box and texture it. So for my Maya users and my 3ds Max users, and well, anyone else that knows how to do this kind of thing, um, we're just going to unwrap it, texture it, and for anyone who doesn't know what these mean, so basically applying a texture to something is just, it's as simple as we're just putting an image onto our object so that when we have it rendered, it's showing an image. And in our case, what we're going to do is add a wood texture, so it's going to look like wood when we finish. So that's what we're going to do. And then we're also going to unwrap it. And unwrapping basically means we're just going to take, let's say, these boxes right here, and within Blender, we're going to, I want to say, basically cut them and then unwrap them like a piece of paper so that we can apply our wooden texture on it. And let me just start with this for an example. So I'm going to start with these pieces right here, and I'm going to unwrap them, and then we're going to apply a texture. So before we begin, let's just hide this for right now. We don't really need it. We only really had it for reference when we were modeling. If you want to keep it, feel free, but what we're going to just do is hide it. So, well, there's 3 ways. Actually, there's probably more. Blender has a bunch of tools, but there's 3 ways we can hide it. We can go in here within the object area, one I've always been using. We can press H on our keyboard, and it hides it. Or what we can do is come over here to this outliner. So this outliner just displays every single thing you have within the scene. If you know you have an object but you can't see it and you don't know where it is, chances are you'll find it within this outliner. You just make sure that you don't have what I have here and have like cube 001 all the way to cube 008 if you're trying to find something. For right now, it's fine because we know we're using all these pieces. They're all right here, and that's where I've kept them just so I don't confuse anyone. But you can hide the pieces you want within this area as well. And so to do that, we're just going to click this little eye right here, and there you go. It's hidden. So now that we're done with that, let's go back here. And to begin unwrapping, what we want to do is, well, go into edit mode. So let's start there. So here we are in edit mode. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to edge select. So with the edge select turned on, we're going to just start selecting edges. And my kind of go-to, at least with boxes, is just select all of them. I'll select all the pieces you need. If you want to look at it like a piece of paper, what we can do is unwrap it in a way so that these long areas right here kind of fold out like a piece of paper, so it's not just entirely cut. I'll explain in a second what I mean, and I'll show you both ways of what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to grab here, here, here. So you may not see it, but I have all the edges around this box selected, at least the perimeter edges. So from here, what we can do is go to edge. So notice up here how some of the things change when I switch to edit mode. It's just it's a menu that'll give you tools that are in context with the mode you're in. So if I go back to object mode, you see how it gives me less options. It's because almost all the things that we can do in object mode fall into this tab right here. It's in context with the mode that you're in. So go back to edit, and there we go. We have more specific ones for specific reasons and purposes. So let's just go to edge. So in edge, the edge tab, we have a bunch of things we can do with it. We can bevel it. We can make more loops that go around it. But what we want to look for is the mark seam. So all the way a little bit closer to the halfway point, we have mark seam. So just click it. And as soon as you click it, you should notice that there's a red outline where your selection of edges was. This is basically Blender saying, okay, I have the edges you wanted, and now I'm going to signal that they are cut. So now we have them cut. So what we can do from here is just select an edge and do the same thing again. So go to edge, mark seam, and there we go. So now we have our box completely unwrapped. So the way to think about this is right here, think of this red line as kind of the starting point. So as we go up, we're kind of folding it out. And we come to the next one, we fold it out again, and then again and again and again, until it ends at wherever the point was. So here, I'll show you what I mean. So now we have this unwrapped. I'm going to come over to this other side, and I'm just going to unwrap all of it. So to do that, I'm just going to select all the edges that we have here. Okay, all that's selected, all that should be selected. Yep. So now I'm going to go back to Edge tab, or the Edge menu, mark seam. So now all of its, the seams are there, basically. So from here, what we can do is go into a UV editor. And what's nice with Blender is that we don't really have to make a new window for that. We can just kind of go up here to the pre-made workspaces. So I'm going to go to UV editing. And there we are. So it kind of gives you one side for 3D objects and then another side for your UVs. For right now, let's just grab one of these boxes and unwrap them. So I'm going to grab the boxes in Face Select. So I'm just going to come here. And as you notice, as I'm selecting them, they're popping up in Blender. So basically what's happening is you're just selecting the objects you want to manipulate within the UV editor so that you basically isolate it, if that makes sense. Or you're only affecting what you have selected within the UV editor to the left. So now that we have everything selected on this one, what we can do is come over to the last little tab over here that says UV, and then the very first one, just unwrap. And there we go. So now we have all of this unwrapped. Be careful when you're working with this because it only will show you your edges that you select. So if you accidentally deselect, it disappears. Don't worry, nothing happened. It's just not being selected. So you just have to reselect them again, and they stay how they were from when you last adjusted them. So what we can do from here is we can manipulate them. So I'm going to move over to the left side in the UV editor, and I'm just going to come over here to these different selections. So in UV editor, we have 4, so we're going to have an extra one now. So we have vertex, edge, face, and then island, or I just kind of like to say like in pieces. So basically, whenever I select something, it grabs the entire thing, or an island. So that's really easy, really nifty when you're trying to just move giant pieces together. When you need to manipulate specific areas, or you need to make like a, let's say like a trim sheet, or just anything in general, you want to kind of use edge or vertex and kind of go from there. But for now, we can just use this island selection, and we can move this around. So I'm just going to go over to the move manipulator, and notice how in the 3D viewport, we have the z-axis. Well, we don't have that in the UV editor because it's a 2D plane. There's a z-axis doesn't exist in a 2D, well, dimension. So, it's only going to show you the x and y. So, there we go. I'm just going to Control-Z undo this. Basically, we have our object unwrapped. Okay, there we go. So yeah, there we go. Fully unwrapped, ready to texture. And then if we come over here to this area, I'm gonna grab these. Oh, accidentally grabbed the manipulator. Don't worry, that's fine. It always happens when you model. Always happens to me when I model. So now we have everything selected. Again, let's go to UV. Let's go to unwrap. And there we go. Now, I'm going to just move these to the side so I can give you an example of, I guess, like the different ways you can unwrap. So I'm just going to select everything here in my edit mode. So I'm just going to deselect, come over to the select tab, and click all. So now I have everything within my edit mode selected. So if you look over to the 3D or 3D, the UV viewport, I have both uh, boxes. So one of them is one giant island piece, and then the rest are just separated. And that's because we had told Blender to separate each piece into basically their own chunk, their own island. So there's not a wrong way to do it, but if you're going to be doing something, you need to make sure that you're consistent with what it is you're doing. So let's say I have a piece of wood that's going to be going, like let's say the veins of the wood are be going up through there and then down. Well, it makes sense to have this piece right here be one entire piece going that way because you won't be struggling trying to match up the veins of the wood. Where in areas, if you did this one where you had the veins of the wood going up through here and then down, you would have to match these edges perfectly to make sure that it's consistent with the texture. So I'll give you an example right now. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna apply the texture and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So to do that, let's go over to the shading tab or the shading workspace. So here we are in the shading workspace, and um, while I went to go take some simple water, I went and made a really quick texture so that I could show you guys. But basically, what this texture is just I applied a material to a node, and I had downloaded a texture from textures.com. I would just dropped it in this way. Here, let me delete this. And then I grabbed this texture that I had downloaded. If you want to look over here, this is your Windows Explorer in Blender. If I click here, it kind of has a similar layout as it did with, I guess, previous times I've been showing. But we don't need that for right now, so let's just hide that. And let's just grab this little area right here that says color and just drag it over to where it says base color. And there you go, texture. It's not too difficult. Just make sure you have the right texture you need for the purpose of your work. But it shouldn't be too hard. So now that we have the textures here available to us, I can start showing you what I mean in terms of UV work. So let's jump on back to UV editing. And as you can see, in the UV editor, we have the texture appearing just right there. But we don't have it appearing in the 3D viewport. So what we need to do is come over here again to the viewport shading. Right now we have it set to solid. We need it to be in material preview. So click it. There we go. It's ready and we can start manipulating it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select these right here. And now that I have all of them selected, I'm going to manipulate them. So, oh geez, that's weird. So watch what happens. Now that I have this box selected, watch what happens when I choose one of these and manipulate them. So as I manipulate them, they're changing within the UV editor, but they're also changing within the 3D viewport. So now that I have them set to a 90-degree angle, or I transform them in a rotation of 90 degrees, the veins of the wood are going as we had said, going up, across, and down. So if you notice right here, the veins kind of go up normally like a piece of wood should, but at the top, they kind of scrunch. So if you want to change that, you're going to have to come inside to this wood texture and manipulate it yourself. So a general idea is if you want the UV textures to look like the model or UV textures to kind of fit with the shape of your model, take a look at how thin this polygon face is, and then just try to do your best to copy that same shape in the UV editor. So I'm going to come over here to Vertex Selection, and I'm going to select these right here, and I'm going to move them more inward so that this area right here matches the shape of this area. So as you could tell, the more I move it towards there, the more it's manipulating. And I'm just going to do this side as well. So there we go. So now it doesn't look as squished. Before we kind of had it way more, I guess, squished in a way. So there you go. And it's keeping consistent with the shape that you have and not having, oh, never mind. I am so sorry. I completely got that wrong. See, this is what I'm talking about with Blender. It can get confusing sometimes. So we were supposed to do it the other way. I'm just going to press Control Z a few times and get back to where we were. Okay. So this square is that square that we're talking about. So if I were to grab all these and move them, notice how the veins are starting to actually get to the correct shape that we wanted. So now they look a lot more like this would right here than they did before. And let me just show you before and after. See how before they looked like that? Oh, I thought Control Shift Z did that. All right, whatever, that's fine. So yeah, that's how they were before. And this is how they are now. And that's because we manipulated this little area right here, this face, to look more or less similar to the one that we have in the 3D viewport. So we just need to come to this one as well. All right, that's the one we have selected. And we know which one it is because it's the first one we selected. And then we're going to just match it up as close as we can to how we had before. That should be fine. Good, so there we go. We have our pieces. So now that we have that done, we can select these and we can manipulate them as well. So these, you're not really seeing within the, I want to say the 3D model, so we don't have to be too technical about them. For the sake of the video, I'm going to be, but when you're making your own props and you're just, making your own things, if there's things that are being hidden inside an object, you really don't have to make them unless these pieces are, say, going to come out like that, then you would need to. So for now, let's just stick to what we have. So we're just going to come over here, here. Okay. So I'm just gonna grab these and squish them to the side like how we had the other pieces up here. So now that we have this done, we can move on to this other piece. So as you can see already, we have different things happening. So like how I said before, because we have these pieces cut, they're doing different things, and they're not going to be, I guess, continuous. So they're not going to more or less follow the same flow as when we had just cut one piece and let the, I guess, unwrapping do the work for us. If, though, this is what you want, then that's the result you'll get. So let me just fix these like that. And then I'm going to rotate it. And then you'll see what I mean. So right now it looks fine, right? But if I were to leave edit mode, you notice there's some textures that aren't lining up. Like right here we have this black line of the vein of the wood. It should match up to this piece right here, or even this black line right here of the vein should be dark when it leaves this side. But it's not because they're not in the same UV space. They're not connected. They're separate. And then over here, every single part of it is lined up perfectly because we didn't make a seam. We didn't cut it. So that's just something to keep in mind whenever you're going to be texturing. In further videos, I'll be discussing this more, and I'll actually have videos where we just only talk about texturing and making sure that our textures look right. But for now, that's just something I wanted to discuss. So let's just call this done, and let's just move forward. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start applying that same material we've been working on to these planks. So I'm going to come over to this little window over here, and it's the, if you're trying to figure out which one you need to select, its material properties, the red sphere. So just click that, and then if you haven't already made your new texture, just press the plus sign, come into here, and with this highlighted, create new, and then you'll make a material. And kind of like how we did before, we'll just go to shading, and then we'll just come over to the texture, drop it in how we had before, and then connect them. And there you go. Pretty simple, not too hard. Um, just We'll just stick with one texture. There's a lot more, and I'll cover those in other videos. So for now, let's just assume we're kind of working in one, I guess, object. Even though these are separated, let's just treat them like it's one object. So another method we could do to unwrapping things is just kind of unwrapping them by where we're viewing them. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me show you. What we can do for right now is take these pieces right here, go to UV and unwrap. And if you can see how it kind of did in the UV editor, it unwrapped them for us. So let's just grab one of these, move them up, and then we'll go back to the vertex and then grab these edges. And let's see if this is the one we're looking for. Let's just move them, and there we go. So now we're going to try to match them up as close as we can to the shape of the 3D object. Because before we had them as a square, and obviously they're not a square in the 3D space. So we're just going to do that. That looks about good. Yeah, that's about good. It might be a little bit thinner than we want, but that's fine. Unless you're looking at it this up close, you'll probably be seeing your crate from all the way over here, and no one will tell the difference. It's fine. You're going to just be getting into your like 10 hours of trying to fix an object instead of just, having something that's really good and something that would be seen maybe from all the way over here. And this is just for practice. This is just to kind of introduce you guys to Blender, so we're not going to worry too much about that. So I'm going to go back to the island, and I'm going to island selection, and I'm just going to kind of stack them in front of each other, or not in front of each other, but just on top of each other. Right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to have these all selected, and we're going to scale them outward. So I'm going to grab the x-axis and just scale them like that. And then let's say there. That looks about good. So now we have that done. We'll just select these up here. And then we're going to unwrap them again. And again, we're going to go through the same process. But this is kind of the work that you do when you're going to unwrap something. It's going to take a while, but trust me, when you're done, it's going to look really nice. And really, the work is worth it because you'll have a really nice looking object, and it's going to be a nice looking texture. So as you can see, we picked the wrong side to kind of squish it. What we want is the texture to kind of pinch from this side and then pinch from this side, but instead what we have is them going this way and this way. So they're pinching in the wrong direction. So let's try this right here. And that might be what we wanted, but I'm not entirely sure because Blender can be a little finicky. Actually, you know what? This one looks nice, but we do need to fix some things. So let's just make this a thin piece, and then we're just gonna pack the islands again, and then have that selected. Okay, so with that selected, we're going to scale again, and we're doing it again because this piece is pretty similar with all the other ones. That it'll give us the same result if we do this. So let's say there, and then I'm just going to select these here. Oh, I have the island selected. That was my mistake. All right, so with that selected, I'm just going to move them. There's still something off about it. Hmm. Well, let's just leave it like that. Sorry, I'm trying to look at it and there's something that seems off to me, but that's fine. Let's just leave it like that and call it done. And these actually look pretty good, so we might just leave them how they are. If anything, we'll just squish them a little. Like that. And then scale them down because they are a little bit smaller. And we'll do the same here. Scale those down as well. And, there we go. We're done. So, oh, right. I almost forgot these pieces right here. I'm just going to grab these. Scale this out. And let's just call that done for now. So, what I can do is do it all again here, but I can just copy it and paste it because we already made it. We don't have to worry about unwrapping it again. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to grab this piece right here, and I'm just going to go to Object and Delete because we don't need it. We already made a plank. So I'm just going to grab this one, go to Object, and then I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to move it this way, and there you go. We have another piece of wood. We didn't need to do it again because we already modeled it, and we already unwrapped it. We gave it a texture. So that's just one way you can kind of save time because doing textures takes a lot of work and it can get very tedious and you can get tired from doing it. So just make it easier on yourself and don't stress yourself out too much. You need to make sure you just you have a clear head when you're doing these kind of things. So one of the things we can do, instead of just copying it, we can manipulate the planks so they look a little bit more different than the I want to say the actual thing. Because if you kind of rotate it around, you'll see that things look pretty similar. And this right here, this pattern, and how it's on the other side when you look at it, that looks weird. That doesn't look right. So um, one way to fix this is just to rotate it. But this little point right here, this is our origin. So my users, 3ds Max users, you know what the origin is. Basically, anything we do to this object, when we manipulate it, it's all based off of the origin, which is this orange little dot. To change the manipulation, we just need to center the pivot. To do that, we just come over to the object, set origin, origin to geometry. So now we have it centered. So now we can manipulate this and just rotate it. Just do this. Select the rotate tool, and then while holding control, just grab this area, and as soon as you hold control, you'll see tick marks. This will let you snap it to, I believe Blender has it set to 5 degrees. So there you go. And if you want to take it just a tiny step further, let's rotate it on the x-axis and make sure we hold control when we need it. So now, if we look here, this texture is set that way and that texture is set that way. Looks pretty good. Yeah, I'd say it looks pretty good. At least this way when we're looking at it, there are different textures when we view it. We could go even further and manipulate the UVs so that they all look unique, but for right now, let's just kind of stick to what we have here. So the last thing we need to do is just unwrap these right here. So again, let's use the same method we did, where we unwrap one and then we just multiply it and adjust them so that we don't have to unwrap all of them. So let's come over to this one. Let's go to edit mode, and then I'm just going to select the edges of this piece right here. If the manipulator gets in your way when you're trying to select something, just come up to the select box. If you hold it, you have some different options you can choose. I just kind of choose the select box. That's the easiest one. It's just your click and drag, pretty standard stuff. So just have that selected, do that, select these pieces over here, and then we'll just unwrap them. So let me kind of focus up here on the UV editor. Now I'll go to UV, unwrap, and now we have our pieces unwrapped. So with that, let's just move this piece up, and then, oh, we need to apply our texture again. So if you haven't already, you can apply your texture within edit mode or object mode. But for right now, I'll just go back to object mode. I'll make sure this piece is selected. Now, we don't need to do another material because we already did it. We already made it. So I can just come over here to material, which is the one I did with you guys, or I already made the one before we had started. I'll just go to material. I'll have that selected, and there you go. It applies the texture. So let's just come back to edit mode. Now we have the edge selected. I'll just go to faces. So now we have them in UV space. So let's just grab these pieces right here, these vertices, and just scale them so that they look better or more resemble the pieces that we have in 3D. So let's call it around there, maybe move it back up a little bit, just a smidge. And there we go. So we have that done. Now what we can do is we can apply the same thing we did with the other texture that we did, the first one that we did, sorry, first texture, the first object. And we're just going to come over to edge. Oh, I thought I pressed edge. Oh, I know, I pressed the edge tab, not the edge selection. There we go. Edge, arc seam, and then now that we have that done, let's go to faces and select the ones that we haven't edited yet. There we go. And we're going to hit UV unwrap. So notice how when I was selecting them and before the unwrap, they were separated. So this is kind of Blender doing its own thing. But once you unwrap it, it will fix the UVs that you have on this side. So again, just doing that. And we don't really need to manipulate anything. It looks pretty close to what we had before. So let's just move with that. So I'll go back to object mode, and with the object selected, I'm just going to go to the move manipulator, and I'm going to set the origin. We're going to need to do that if we're going to want to make the wooden planks a little bit different. So let's set origin to geometry, and then let's grab these pieces right here, shift select them, and then go to object and delete. So now from there, let's move on and let's just duplicate. And once we're done with the duplicate, we should be finished with our object. So just grab that, move it, and then let's just repeat the process over again. So we just need to do this, I believe, 3 more times. And then once we're done, we'll just manipulate a few of them and get them looking slightly different so it doesn't look like the exact same pattern is being done here. Alright, now we just need one more. Let's see. Let's just move that a tad bit closer to the edge. And then let's move this one closer to the middle. Alright, perfect. So, there we go. We have our model. But let's just change a few things so that it looks a little bit different. Now, I'm going to select this one, hit the rotate, and I'm just going to rotate it one direction. And I'm going to grab the next one and just flip it. There we go. Okay. Just flip it. And then this one, I'm going to rotate it and flip it. There we go. Let's just keep it around there. Okay, and then the last one, let's just rotate it this way, just keep things different. There we go. And then let's just fix this one. I don't really know why it's looking like that, but that's fine. Okay, cool. So there we go. We have our wood. So sure, I'm sure some of you are experienced already to know, like, maybe this might not be the best looking one for you, and you might have done this a while ago. But for anyone that hasn't, ever used anything, done anything in Blender, congratulations, you made a box. uh, it might not sound like a lot, but this is definitely your first step into making 3D stuff. And you know, I've been here. This is where I've been, and I've made boxes. I've made plenty of things that look like this. So it just takes practice. So from here, let's just kind of move back to our starting workspace, and let's just call that done. So um, there we are. I just kind of wanted to show you a really quick prop that you can make in Blender. Um, might be a little advanced for some people that are trying to learn Blender, but hopefully I was able to teach you guys something that would be maybe not difficult, but at least my goal was to inform you guys. So hopefully I did that, and hopefully you enjoyed what I wanted to show. Um, uh, don't forget to check out the link down below for Nexttut and see what we have to offer. And hopefully you guys will like and subscribe to this. I love teaching Blender, so let me know. I'd love to hear what you guys think, or what you guys think I should talk about in the next video. So with that being said, this is Alejandro Aguilar. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.